Touch nothing. Where is Signor Bianchi and the Greek doctor?
In the dining car, monsieur.
Fetch them at once.
Like you both know something. The next moment, the person's gone. And it's too late to do anything about it. And you always remember it because it was there and you let it go. And you think to yourself, what if I had stopped? What if I had said something? What if? What if?
Thank you! Whoever's behind me. Just go ahead and play. Go roll the dice and play. Come on, aren't you gonna play?
Go ahead. Give it to me.
I've got this.
Not rough enough for you?
But Rensler's crucial to us. Without them on board, we got zero credibility.
That's why you're here.
I'd advise you to keep him downwind at all times.
You let me win. You weren't trying. You won. I got here first.
Anne Coates was a pioneer of film editing who won 2 Oscars, for Lawrence of Arabia in 1963 and the revered Lifetime Achievement Award in 2017. A powerful figure, she held her own in the male-dominated British film industry of the 50s and emerged to become a highly rated Hollywood editor from the 80s onwards. Her name is associated with some of the most admired films of all time, and she has been frequently interviewed and documented by her fans and peers. Let's find out more by taking a look at probably her most famous film, Lawrence of Arabia.
I'm just going to tell you a quick story, really for students, and that is how I got the job on Lawrence of Arabia. And we bumped into Jerry O'Hara one morning, who was a top AD, and a friend of ours, who I said, what are you up to, Jerry? He said, well, I'm working with David Lean, doing some tests of Albert Finney for 7 Pillars of Wisdom, which was what Lawrence was called in those days. I said, what, have you got anybody cutting them? And Jerry said, well, I don't know. I've no idea. But he said, I'll put your name forward. Anyway, by about 10 o'clock on Monday morning, the production manager, John Palmer, called me. And he said, we're not paying any money, £50 for the couple of weeks. But he said, if you want to come and do them, please show up. He said, David says he's met you, and so you don't need to see you again, but just show up on the first day of shooting, which is what I did. And to be suddenly thrown into something like that was very nerve-wracking. Anyway, David and I ran the dailies together, and he gave me some notes and things. And I went away and cut the first sequence, or scenes it were. And then the next night, or 2 or 3 nights later, we were running. He'd then gone on to the other scene. And he said to me, have you cut the first scene? And I said, yes, I have actually. I'd like to run it for you tomorrow. He said, no, run it tonight. I said, what, in front of the whole unit? I said, I'd like to show it to you first. No, Annie, he said, don't be so stupid. Just go and get it and run it. Which I had to do. I was very nervous about it, but anyway, I ran it, and I couldn't tell you a single cut went by. I was so frightened. Anyway, he got up at the end and said something that's one of the nicest things I've ever had said to me, and that was, I've never seen anything else ever cut exactly like I would have done it myself. And, I mean, you can imagine, I nearly burst into tears. I didn't, because David would not have liked that.
Now, the nominees for film editing are Anne Coates for Lawrence of Arabia, Samuel E. Beatley for The Longest Day, Ferris Webster for the Manchurian Candidate, William Ziegler for Meredith Willson's The Music Man, John McSweeney Jr. for Mutiny on the Bounty. Mr. Miller, thank you. Ann Coates for Lawrence of Arabia.
In conversations with Walter Murch, Anne said, David Lean always used to say, have the courage of your conviction, tell the story your way, I'll respect what you did, although in certain instances I may want things another way. He would hold these shots of the desert and I'd say, David, you can't hold them that long. However, he said, wait until the music's on, wait until the whole rhythm is together, and he was right.
Aqaba. Aqaba. From the land.
You are mad.
It's funny, people always like, you know, in school and in the books that I would read, it's like the best edit is an invisible edit. You don't want people to even know it's been edited. And then when I look back at all the work that I loved in Anne's work, I'm like, this is not invisible. You're not looking if you think that's invisible. Even all the way back to Lawrence of Arabia with the match to the sunset, to the desert. That's an incredibly like bold, brazen cut. It's not invisible, and it's thought of as one of the greatest cuts of all time. So like, why do we keep coming back to this idea of like, we just don't want anybody to notice what we're doing? It felt like Anne was like, I don't care if you notice it. If it's good, that's all that really matters, you know? And what she was doing was great. It doesn't need to be invisible. It just needs to be good.
I mean, the most famous one is the cut from England to Arabia, you know, with in Lawrence of Arabia, with the sunset cut, which I saw in the script is a dissolve. It's written as a dissolve. It's not written as a cut. And my mother, you know, there's lots of records of her saying that she had been watching the French avant-garde movies and was said to David, hey, how about we do a cut? And he was like, show me. So she did, and he was like, I think you need to take 3 frames off. I can't remember which side. 3 frames off. She took the 3 frames off, and he went, yeah, love it, let's leave it. So that's she talked about that. That one's probably the most famous cut in the history of movie making, I'm going to say. I can't think of a single cut. I can think of sequences that might be more famous, but just of a one single cut, I don't think that there is anything that quite compares to that one, because it was groundbreaking and then allowed everyone else to start doing straight cuts and stop with the dissolves. And they were so ugly, some of those dissolves. Such an editor, some of the dissolves I look at in the old movies and I'm like, oh my God, that's so ugly. Why didn't they just cut straight to the door opening? Which seems obvious now, right? But it wasn't obvious back then. And people forget, because it wasn't obvious in my mother's world. My mother had been editing with dissolves her whole life. So even though people might say, you know, David, he definitely knew what he was doing and he definitely filmed with an editor's eye, but my mother definitely brought things that he had not thought of, because he was also old school, and she came in and shook it up a little bit.
I mean, I love Lawrence of Arabia. Obviously, it's just in film school. It's one of the pillars of filmmaking that you watch. Elephant Man with David Lynch, the Soderbergh films, Out of Sight. I mean, it's just the range of different directors that she was working with and the types of stories that she was telling and the ways that she was telling them are so varied and different. And the fact that, like, she doesn't... I don't know that I would say Anne has, like, a style, right? That you can look at something and be like, that's Anne's style, the way she's cutting this, which I think is a good thing. I remember reading a book about Picasso, and he was like, he was talking to somebody, an interviewer, and he was saying, I had this nightmare that I was painting the same way for my entire life, and I couldn't wake up, and I was just doing the same paintings over and over again, you know, because like the consistency of style is a trap and is such a terrible thing for an artist. And so, but I do know that, like, very consistently when I would watch a film, And later on, would go back and be like, who? And once I became an editor, I'd be like, who edited that film? That Anne's name kept popping up. And there was a certain, not a style, but a certain kind of like weight and heaviness to the films. I don't know if that's the right word, but a certain grounding in reality and a certain weight that they have, where you watch them and they feel solid. They feel like they weigh 1,000 pounds, that movie.
The success of Lawrence of Arabia led directly to Anne working with Peter Glenville on Beckett, where she had the pleasure of editing not just Peter O'Toole again, but also Richard Burton. In Beckett, Peter O'Toole's King Henry II decides to reconcile with his former friend Beckett, played by Richard Burton. She chose to cut directly to their meeting. A lovely cut, nothing complicated, she recalled. The producer, Hal Wallace, said to me, "You can't do a direct cut. You've got to do a dissolve in there." He's 50 miles away. I said, so what? It's a great cut and very dramatic and goes right to the heart of the scene. He never mentioned it again, and it stayed like it was. That's what I meant by the fact that I never work with formulas or rules. Beckett became Anne's second Academy Award nomination.
Canterbury's only 5 hours from London. I've just written it in 4. I'm frozen stiff.
Would you like some wine?
No. Give me a reason. Why did you send a messenger?
What answer did you give him? You've arrived here before he has.
I detect the old devious Beckett here. What game are you playing, Thomas?
No game, my prince. Lord Gilbert murdered a priest. I want the guilty punished.
Very theatrical, not a lot of coverage.
I love Beckett.
Beautiful dialogue, but not a lot of coverage. Not a big grand epic.
I mean, when you've got actors like Peter O'Toole and Richard Burton saying Anouilh lines, I mean, it was so joyous to listen to.
Yeah.
I used to love it.
But I shall agree to the 9 other articles in a spirit of peace, and because I know you must remain king in all and of all, save the honor of God.
And it was a little theatrical, and it certainly lacked space. I mean, you know, there weren't the big shots that there should be in it.
All right. I will give way on this one point. In memory of our past friendship, you may return to England.
Thank you, my prince. I meant to go back in any case and give myself up to your power. For in all things that concern this earth, I owe you obedience.
The actors were drunk out of their minds to start with, which never makes it easy. But when you've got 2 superb actors like that, you can, if you work at it, you can get the right pieces, and it really doesn't notice except in a couple of places. But it was really funny because both of them couldn't control their horses, and I remember it much more difficult than it looks. It looks as if they're fairly straight, the horses, but actually they were pouncing about and they were facing the wrong direction, and the boys couldn't control them because of them not getting it right the first time. We went to a second day, and if you notice, the weather's completely different.
The sky is, did you notice the sunny sky and the dark?
Yeah, and the thunderous grays the other day. But when the 2 performances are so good that I don't think we really noticed those things.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first saw it after not having seen it for some years, when I ran it somewhere, I was surprised how quiet and docile the horses looked and the actors were looking in the right direction. It didn't seem that happened at all at the time. So I guess it worked somehow.
Though the term probably didn't have the same meaning back then, this is one of the most famous examples of what is known as a match cut, one that symbolically unites 2 images which have something between them in common. In Lawrence, the cut can be seen as a metaphor for the heat of the match, Into the Heat of the Sun, Fire into Fire. She's very good at it. Here's another example.
I'll give you really interesting, to do with my mother, a really interesting insight into line scripts and directors and how different directors are. So I had the line script for Lawrence of Arabia. And in that line script, there were the pages, it was so interesting. Basically, there was a line going, just one line, for like 3 pages. Just one line. So David just shot whatever the size was. Maybe the camera was moving, but they didn't have steady cams and stuff, so it was always, you know, they had to lay the tracks. So he would have a 3-page dialogue scene with no coverage. And then the next scene, you'd see, he'd shoot this, 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 and this. So he didn't shoot 3 different versions of this, or 3 different versions of this part of the script. He knew exactly how he wanted it cut together. And he, rhythmically, you can see him doing, this is a scene with going to be no cuts, and this is a scene that's then going, and then I'm going to cut, so it really matters. And yet you look, and then you look at Chaplin, and you look at that line script, and there's so many lines, you can hardly differentiate one line from the other. There's so many takes per scene. And you see the different types of director. So Dickie Attenborough is shooting the script in such a way that he's going to, I'm going to say figure it out in the cutting room. Like he's giving us lots and lots and lots of footage so that we can have a creative freedom in the cutting room. David Lean, on the other hand, having been an editor, is like, I don't want any creative freedom. I don't want anybody being able to tell me you need to cut to a close-up. I'm going to shoot it in one take, and that's what you have. And if anybody has a problem with that, that's their problem, not mine. Both are fantastic movies, and both are genuine ways to make a movie. There's no right or wrong of it. But as an editor, for freedom of editing, I like having more stuff to play with. But I also love a director who's that organized and secure in his movie making and storytelling that he doesn't swamp you.
You can't be Chaplin. The guy I hired did the best comedy drunk I ever saw. But he was old. I don't pay $100 a week to juveniles.
Another one, boss.
No, we'll move on.
Mr. Sennett?
Unlike other top-grade editors, Anne didn't have prolonged relationships with directors, happily moving from David Lean to Richard Attenborough to Wolfgang Peterson.
Oh, my mother was so tough. Oh my gosh. She was very Look, my mother grew up in an era where very few women had very successful careers.
Good night. Night. Good night, Mr. Ferguson. Good night, Mr. Ferguson.
So, for her to be successful in a man's world, she had to be very competitive and really want it and very ambitious.
So you think it a mere nothing to be dismissed? No more than changing the bed sheets to find a new job in a wonderful shop like that.
She never lost that in her whole life. When I became an editor, she had a love-hate relationship with it. She obviously loved it because I was following in her footsteps and, all the rest of it. But she also didn't like the competition. She genuinely didn't like the competition. I mean, she would get quite annoyed about it. But I'm not surprised because she had to be that obsessive and that competitive to be as successful as she was when she was. If you look at photographs of her when she was younger, in the cutting room. She's wearing skirts, but as soon as she could get into trousers, she got into trousers, and she always wore trousers unless she was going to a big event like the Oscars or something. She always wore trousers. She was always in her masculine. She was very rarely in her feminine, which I find really interesting, because if you look at her editing, she's in her feminine a lot. And that's what makes her a great editor, is that if you look at Unfaithful, she's very much in her feminine there. But in life, she always was in her masculine, because that's how she managed to survive in a masculine world. And she had to prove to every director that director, even though she was married and had kids, she had to prove that director was going to be the centre of her universe, and that her family was always going to come second.
Yeah, I think you have to. I mean, I can imagine at that time she had to, try to hold her own in that was such a male-dominated world. I mean, it really still is. I feel it,
There's a famous story that she used to tell, is that she was working for Ronnie Neame, who was a great friend of hers. She did a lot of movies for him, and they ended up being great friends until the end of both their lives. And she got the job, but she had met my father. She was already in a relationship with him. And she got married whilst on the job with Ronnie Neame, but didn't tell Ronnie Neame, because when Ronnie hired her, he said, one of the reasons I'm okay hiring you is that you're not married.
Unmarried, or a widow.
So I know I'll be the centre of your universe, because that's what I expect from you.
Hello, Stella, love. How are you?
Bursting to see you. Oh, and darling, for once I'm absolutely ready on time. Right down to the last button.
Would he have ever said that to a man? I don't think so. So she got married and didn't tell him. And then eventually, about 3/4 of the way through the movie, because, movies go on for a long time, she eventually had to fess up that she was married. And also after she felt she'd proved to him that she could be married and be just as good an editor. So once she felt comfortable with that, she told him. And he said, oh, well, okay, but thank God you're not pregnant, because pregnant women are a nightmare. And she was pregnant. And so she didn't say anything right up until the end of the movie. She never told him she was pregnant. She was pregnant with my older brother. But, that's what she was dealing with back then. And that was Ronnie. Ronnie's a nice guy, But there was this understanding. And I hate to say it, but my mother, she kind of believed the same thing. She didn't like hiring women in her cutting room. And I said to her, why not? And she said, oh, because they're just too emotional. And then once a month, they just become a nightmare. But no, I don't think it honestly made any difference how good you were at your job. You still had to, as a woman, prove that you would treat the film first and your family second. So I'll tell you the legend that I grew up with. She was born in 1925, so she was 20 at the end of the Second World War. And when she was 17, she volunteered as a nurse. And she was a nurse it was the doctor who was doing all the skin graft, who really, with the aviators, and they came back with the really, completely burnt off faces, and he discovered that you could grow skin from the shoulder onto the face. She was working for him, which was amazing. I mean, my mother's had this amazing life, whereas before that, she was horse riding, and she was one of the most successful child riders ever in the history of riding in England. And she and her brother, Uncle John, who then ended up producing like Yellow Submarine and The Snowman, and winning BAFTAs and getting nominated for Oscars and all sorts as well. She and her younger brother were just these powerhouses. I have a book of National Velvet signed to my mother, and I'm signing basically saying, dear Anne, your riding at Olympia in the show was so extraordinary that I wanted to sign this book to you. I mean, she was, from a child, such a high achiever.
At an early age, Anne was taken on a school trip to the cinema, she recalls. These extremely boring books which I was ploughing my way through were suddenly up there on the screen, and I was carried away when I saw Wuthering Heights. I was in another world. I was swept away by it and Laurence Olivier. It suddenly made me realise that it would be quite an interesting job to be able to take a book like Wuthering Heights and make it something magical on the screen. It had a profound effect on my life.
Then she said to her family, who were in the film industry, because J. Arthur Rank was her uncle, I want to be in the film industry. And they all said, over our dead bodies, that's never happening. It's a wanton world, and you're not going into it. And she said, but I really want to. The family was very, very religious. They were Methodists, so much so that Joseph Rank, who started Rank McDougall, the milliner, became very, very rich, has built in, I'm going to say Sheffield, somewhere like that, the massive Methodist church. They were very religious, and my mother was very vociferously, right up to the end of her life, not religious, in fact, quite anti-religion. And they knew this about her. So she said, I'm going to be a director. That's what she wanted to do. I'm going to direct films. And they went, you're not going to direct films. She went, no, I am going to direct films. And they said, well, we have a job for you. J. Arthur Rank had started Pinewood Studios, and that's where he was making his Methodist movies that they would show on a Saturday in church. And that's how Pinewood started. It started to make religious movies. Then he discovered that making movies was expensive, and he needed to make movies that made money. And so he then started making like the Lavender Hill Mob and all the other movies to make the money, and it all kind of grew from there. So they turned around to her and they said, we're going to put you in the cutting room. And they knew my mother was not a very patient person, and the cutting room would be pretty boring for her. We're going to put you in the cutting room of the Methodist movies. And they were like, that'll put paid to this, that's her idea. She'll get so bored, she'll hate it, and it's all about religion, and she will just run screaming. She loved it. She loved it. She didn't care what the movies were. She just loved it. And she loved being in the cutting room. And at some point, she says she realised she could never be a director because she wanted a family. And she knew that she couldn't do both back then.
In a 2000 interview with fellow editor Walter Murch, Anne talked about her first film. The first film I did was for Michael Powell, who was making The Red Shoes. Reggie Mills, who was his top editor, took the picture over to recut it, and he was wonderful. I mean, he never actually taught me anything as such, but watching him and the discipline was so good for me. And, you know, he never spoke. I just used to hand him the trims and ask for the trims. Then I got into working on The Red Shoes for a little bit, helping out on that, and was able to go on the set to watch. So it was an interesting time. What an understatement. Anne just happened to have started her career on one of the most brilliant British films of all time. Anne worked several times with another Powell and Pressburger editor, John Seaborn, notably on an astonishing 1949 film called The Rocking Horse Winner. Anne was certainly getting to see vivid British cinema at first hand. In the 1990s, Anne recalled, Seaborn was very old and very experienced. He was also slightly deaf, so often he didn't hear the notes the director gave him, and I would tell him what to do. He frequently went home at about 4 to tend to his gardens, and he'd say, finish that scene, which was a great experience. He taught me the most of anybody, I think. He taught me to be ruthless, not to fiddle around with matching and such things, but to go for the heart of the scene, for the drama, and always keep in mind on telling the story through the pictures.
So my mother wasn't a sound editor. That doesn't mean she didn't cut sound, because when you cut, you're always cutting sound because that's part of your job description. But mainly her assistants did the music and sound.
Anne got her first job as lead editor on the Pickwick Papers.
Now, gentlemen, Mr. Pickwick. Gracious, out of prison. Yes, sir. What does this mean? The meaning is very clear, sir. Very clear, sir.
Mr. Pickwick, pray let me explain.
No, sir. Let me explain. Take care, sir. Let him assault you, Mr. Fogg. What? But don't return it on any account.
Oh, no, I won't return it.
You need not disturb yourselves, gentlemen. I only came here to tell you that you are a well-matched pair of mean, rascally, pettifogging robbers. Yes, sir. A pair of mean, rascally, pettifogging robbers. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. And a Happy New Year.
Some of the scenes we've been seeing here are from To Paris with Love, directed by Robert Hamer, who would challenge Anne with material that seemed as if it would not cut together. Quoting Anne, she said, "He liked to take actors out left and bring them in right. I had to find something I could cut away to, put between the two. It was great training. I wouldn't be beaten. It's your job as an editor to make it work."
Everything is so beautifully proportioned, so symmetrical. Quiet.
I say, you all right?
How can you drive so dangerously? You might have killed this lady. They nearly ran into me, you know, these English, always on the wrong side of the street. I turned quickly like this and she fell off.
That is not so. You conduct that horrible bug like a lunatic.
Lizette!
You murderer. Never again will I ride on that monster of a midget. There!
You are out of your head, Lizette. You have gravely injured my friend. For 2 francs, I will punch you in the nose.
Now, listen, do be sensible.
You will punch no noses.
You keep out of this.
When I was a child, and my mother was working on the moviola and the steam bag, the moviola is a very intimate machine. There's a tiny little screen. You can't see it. It's really noisy. It's going clack, 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 clack as everything's going. And it's much more intimate. Whereas now with on the big screens, if you come into someone's cutting room, it's much more inclusive. And you'd be like, hey, I'll show you this little bit of, I just cut together. Whereas when I was a kid, it was just boxes and numbers and pieces of film that you couldn't even see what it was. It was not an exciting place, I have to say. It was not an exciting place.
Back to that interview with Walter Murch. When I first went into editing, I was always told never to cut, to hold the scene as long as it played. With British actors who were pretty good, you could play those scenes. Even quite small actors were so good that you didn't feel you had to cut. I still have that feeling, actually, but a lot of directors don't give you masters. Steven Soderbergh doesn't do any masters, so you are never in that position. But even then, I don't cut when I don't feel it's necessary.
Well, he's to command the battalion. And I'll have another dram.
What about you,
What about me, China?
Are you staying on?
Unless you're going to get rid of me, Jimmy.
Well, I thought there might have been a chance of it.
Staying on as second in command, you mean?
So may it please you, Captain Simpson.
Pinewood Studios was, they had this amazing bar that they still have, where everybody met afterwards. And she talked about it a little bit, but I wish she talked about it more. Where, at lunchtime, they'd all go there and they'd all start drinking. And then in the afternoon, she said, directors that she worked with would pass out on the sofa and she'd sort of, had a couple of glasses of wine and just be cutting away. And then afterwards, they all hung out at the bar afterwards. And it was everybody from Peter Finch to Peter O'Toole to whoever was shooting whatever movie. And they all hung out. And then they all drove home in the evening, fairly drunk. But it was really, I always wished that she would have talked about it more, but she was quite private about it. I don't know, she and Peter Finch had a great love affair for many years. And the only reason I found out about it was I was with her in the living room. And we always used to watch the 10 o'clock news together. And on the 10 o'clock news, it said that Peter Finch had died. And my mother's reaction was so emotional and upset. And she was shaking, like she was really upset. And I was like, who is Peter Finch? What is that? What is this? And she said, he was one of the great loves of my life. and that they had had this amazing long love affair back in the day when he was but he was married, so it wasn't something that they could. And then eventually she said to me that I think he got divorced and married again and divorced, and then he asked her to marry him, and she said no. And I said, why did you refuse him? And she said, because he was an alcoholic and I knew I couldn't be married to an alcoholic. So, so everything that they had thought my mother would happen, happened. She hung out with the actors, she had affairs with the actors, she was, drinking at the bar, she was doing all the stuff that they were like hoping that they would put her off from doing.
In 1965, Anne moved to Ireland for John Cardiff's film of Young Cassidy, which included this memorable riot scene shot by the director over 3 days.
You bloody scab, you!
Holy God, make what terrible thing is upon us here.
Sorry to interrupt, but you may be wondering how Paul Rodgers fits into our story. I was watching his fabulous and modest acceptance speech.
Chief DeMello, Jing and Carey, my Parallax family. Also want to say editing is an art form that was pioneered by women. All my editing heroes are women.
He sounded like somebody who might want to talk to us about Anne.
All the films, I didn't know it at the time, but growing up, all the films that I was watching and was impressed by and were moved by were, for the most part, cut by women. I mean, all of, like Romeo and Juliet, Moulin Rouge, but Baz Luhrmann. These things impressed me so much, and even things like Out of Sight, that Anne cut. And then kind of going to film school, learning about editing, and then starting to go through the credits and realizing this pattern was really enlightening for me. I mean, I think that in general women have an easier way of accessing that emotional intimacy.
Oh, I see you're constructing a church?
Oh, no, it's a cathedral. You see? Only I have to rely on my imagination for what I can't actually see. So
I've always felt like as editors, our tool, one of our tools and one of our biggest tools is our emotional literacy. Our ability to understand our own emotions, the emotional reaction we have when we're watching footage, when we're watching the faces of the actors, when we see the way that a scene or a movie is coming together. And that a lot of that just comes from our lives, right? And it comes from our experiences in the world. And that's what has always struck me about Anne's work, is it feels like it's work done by someone who's lived a full life.
Look! Oh, that brute's got one of our porkers.
We could try it. We've been trying to beat the eagle.
Yes?
What if we were not the eagle, but the pig?
Yes? Both together then! Ready? Steady! Go!
And understands the world and understands people and understands the relationships between people and the relationships between people and the spaces that they're in, and with each other and with themselves, and the internal monologues that are happening. You know, there's a lot of internal stuff going on with the way that she cuts scenes, and a lot of that is acting and directing, but she knows how to access it, and she recognizes it. And so I feel like that emotional literacy, that tool, has to constantly be sharpened by day-to-day interactions with people. And from everything I've heard about Anne, she was incredibly warm and funny and kind, and I think that comes through in her work, you know.
In 2016, Anne shared her memories of working on In the Line of Fire with the Guild of American Cinema Editors.
How would you like to give a colleague a ride home?
Why do you keep flirting with me?
Am I flirting with you?
You know it can't possibly go anywhere, so why keep doing it?
Maybe it's because I know it can't possibly go anywhere. Come on, give me a lift. I'll buy you an ice cream. No further obligation.
Oh. Wonderful romance between Rene Russo and Clint Eastwood.
It was fun to cut because, you know, Clint is another actor that often doesn't do the same thing twice and doesn't play the scene the same way twice.
He doesn't really learn his lines till the very last.
No, he never does. Because at the beginning of this film, they said, let's come, Wolfgang said, you know, let's come and rehearse. Oh, no, said Clint. I'm not doing any rehearsing. I'll come in the morning and we'll run through it and then we'll shoot it. And that's what we did.
So if I'm here to court the feminist vote, what demographics do you represent?
See, white piano-playing heterosexuals over the age of 50. There ain't a whole lot of us, but we do have a powerful lobby.
They're never eating ice cream at the same time. They never got their heads looking at each other at the same time. And to get the best performance out of it, which was the important thing in a scene like that, it was very complicated. And I see one or two little slips there, but I don't think, hopefully, the audience kind of notices.
You want to ride?
I don't think so. I like it here this time of day. I think I'll hang out.
Okay, well, thanks for the ice cream. See ya.
You're welcome.
And you get a lot of compliments about actually the timing of her looking back. And to you, it wasn't a difficult thing at all after doing the ice cream thing. This was
yes, but you know, I spent a little time thinking about it.
It's again an inherent rhythm and
yeah, it's something you can't play.
Come on now, give me a little look, a little glance back. Give me that smug look and be on your way.
I never changed it, I don't think. I think I more or less did it like that and stuck. You know, did it several times and then left it.
Yeah.
Go back in.
Well, Abe, damn, wish I could have been there for you, pal.
If Anne cut every film the way she cut her first film because it was so good, she wouldn't be as celebrated as she is. I'm sure she was constantly, you know, maybe not coming from a place of insecurity. I didn't know her, but at least like coming from a place of knowing that like she hadn't figured it all out yet. There wasn't just one way to do it because everything she did was so different, and always felt like a progression. And you could pick up the sense of play and playfulness and her work and of her like. You know, like an Out of Sight with the little freeze frames. I could picture her doing that and just being like, yeah, that's cool. You know, never seen that before, or never seen it used in this way. And that's what I love. You know, you watch it when I watched it, not as a filmmaker, when I was younger, I was just like, this is great. I don't know why, but I feel it. And then you watch it having a little more education in the world of film, and you start to see what she was doing, what she was building on, and what she was playing with, and it's cool. It's great. It's fun to watch from both sides, you know.
So Catch and Release, I was watching the where they're making love with each other, and I was looking at it and I was going, yeah, you know, it's a classic way to do it, but it works. Because you feel the emotion, and you can go in on like a hand caressing, and you just, you know, you get that tingle by watching it. But if you just cut to a hand stroking, it just wouldn't be. You wouldn't be in the emotion of it.
I'll stay here with you.
I think it's very erotic when you don't see that much. It was an interesting problem with Out of Sight. The way it was written was just one scene in the bar. So I cut the scene where they meet and he sits down and talks to her and they start flirting. And then the scene in the bedroom was only shot silently because it was going to have the dialogue from the first scene laid over it anyway, so it didn't work as a scene. Then we got the idea, Stephen Soderbergh and I, sort of between us really, to start intercutting. We just tried one or two things and then it started to gel. Flashing back, sometimes we flash forward. I would say, let's do this and cut from here and the hands, and he'd say, let's try overlaying the dialogue here, and we just did it together, and it was really exciting. And we did this little thing of stopping the frames. It's never really a long freeze, it's just a few frames that we freeze. Just heighten the sexual tension between the two of them. It tells a story. It's very emotional. It's very sexual, I think, without really showing much. Some other films I've done have shown more.
You went to see her?
Don't warn her about Chino.
So she did help you?
I don't think we should get into that.
You know, when they're undressing separately, and we've got odd dialogue over the undressing, nothing to do with what they're actually doing. Yeah, I think that it's really good and very, very good storytelling.
Out of Sight, I love the freeze frame stuff. I mean, I'm still like, you know, and it's not just for fun, you know. It's easy to make something cool and make something impressive. It's not easy to make something good, and it's really hard to make something great. And she's doing kind of all that wrapped up in one, you know, in scenes like the Out of Sight kind of seduction scene. She's playing, she's doing technically impressive stuff, but she's also just pulling you in, and it's just one of the sexiest scenes in cinema. I mean, it has to be.
Truly made in the cutting room. That's. I think it was Guillermo del Toro who said there are very few pure film arts, and editing is one of them, because before, that's why it's called editing. And it's called editing because there was no other name to give it, because the closest thing you could think of was somebody who edited someone else's book. But the visual art of film editing is a pure film art. And it's really frustrating that they keep trying to put us into the second Oscars, and they keep trying to like push it out, and people don't fully appreciate that this is a pure film art.
Let's have a look at how Anne applies that pure film art to a suspense scene from Tom Vaughan's Extraordinary Measures.
Hold her, pal. Mr. Crowley, what are you doing in here? You're not authorized.
No, I can explain everything.
What's the matter, Chuck? Is there a problem?
There's a problem. I got Mr. Crowley in here without clearance.
Oh, that's my fault, man. I got busy in the lab. I sent Jersey Boy here to get me a couple jugs of enzyme. Sorry.
Lawrence of Arabia, Hotel Paradiso, and then also be cutting Soderbergh's work and Out of Sight, and they all feel fresh. and great and relevant, and they feel like they are in touch with that time, I think is really impressive, and is a testament to her emotional literacy that just continued. She seemed just like a student of the world and of people. I really wish I could have met her. A lot of my career, at least, is just trying to entertain myself. You know, I get the feeling that, like, just through people's work, like Anne's work, that's what she was trying to do a lot of the time, because you're alone in a room for a long time, and you become friends with the footage, and so sometimes you don't want to have a serious conversation with the footage. Sometimes you want to play with it and have fun and crack jokes with it, and you start doing stuff that you're not supposed to do with it, you know, and that's where those, like, really fun, strange ideas come, and that's where the innovation comes, and that carries through in her work. I can only imagine that she was having those same conversations with her footage, you know.
Now, this movie was an incredibly funny movie. The challenge was Bill Murray likes to improvise a lot. I know you're not surprised about that, but they didn't shoot the other side of it.
No, I know. I don't just think that was just inexperienced. It can't be, you know. I mean, Frank Oz was quite experienced. It was, as you would all know, I mean, if you're doing ad-lib, you have to have two cameras and get the reactions to the ad-lib. But I had reactions to a completely different dialogue that I had to make into reactions to his ad-lib.
But in this particular scene, fortunately, there wasn't dialogue, and you certainly made the most of his brilliant ad-lib.
Faye, this is so scrumptious. Is this hand shucked?
Mm-hmm. Would you like some more chicken, Bob?
He's very difficult to cut, Bill Murray. Never does the same thing twice, ever.
There was a bit of problem on set. In real life, Richard Dreyfuss and Bill Murray hated each other.
Bill Murray picked up a very nice producer, Nora Ziskin, and threw her fully clothed into the lake in the first week of shooting, and it kind of went on from that. There was always some drama. He threw a whiskey glass at Richard.
And didn't he say he refused to shoot if she was on set?
Yes, well, after that, later on, he snatched her. She thought he was going to punch her in the face, but he went like that and took her glasses off and threw them on the ground and stamped on them and said, if you ever come on the set again, I'm leaving.
And so it was sort of two camps. It was the director, Frank Oz, and Bill Murray, and then Richard Dreyfuss and Laura Ziskin.
With the editor in between.
Could you get that tomato off there, please? Thank you.
It's one of the only films I've ever worked on or even heard about that made more money its second week because of word of mouth, because they didn't do very much publicity. Disney never got, it was a Disney film, Disney never got behind it, and the boys didn't get behind it. I was at a preview once talking with Richard Dreyfuss, and some crowd came past and said, oh, they're so good together, those two. I do hope they make lots of films together. And Richard said, not bloody likely.
Your book is going to do a lot of good for a lot of people. I'm walking proof of that.
Anne's conversations with her footage ranged across many different genres and styles of film. Here she is at work on another historical drama, Lady Jane.
And he was led through all the people. To the scaffold steps. Just 3 or 4. And when he'd climbed them, he turned, held the rail, and addressed the people, asking God's forgiveness. Took off his hat and coat, his collar.
Serious stuff, but now let's change mood and genre again and take a longer look at one of her best-known films.
Murder on the Orient Express with the different interviews is a really good example of how to tell underlying stories. Because in the one with Ingrid Bergman, it's all about her discomfort, but she's a loner, and whatever her past experiences have been, she's on her own. And so you feel her isolation the way that My Mother Cut It. She doesn't keep cutting back forward. She doesn't need to. We know what the questions are. And also, Ingrid Bergman's such a good actress. Why would you leave her? You can't do that with every actor. But if you have the luxury of that, then it's lovely. And it's lovely that she was let alone to do that, because that quite often you'll get, well, we need to cut to so-and-so for his line. It's like, do you really do you need to? Sigmund Bergman.
Have you been interested in religion? From 5 years. In summer, and I had been sick, as always, and I sat in the grass in the garden, and I saw Jesus in the sky, with many little children. But all the children were brown. So it was a sign for me to look after little brown babies. Yes. Were your parents religious?
So that one, and then the Michael York sequence is all about what's going on between the two of them. So we're not on Poirot very much, because his questions aren't actually what's important in the scene. What's important in the scene is what's going on between the two characters, and what you can see that they're hiding stuff and they're really nervous and there's something going on but you don't know what it is, and you want to pique the audience's interest and pull them in, going, what is going on here?
Immigration officials are often less than cleanly. They sit in their little box, eating a buttered roll with one hand and stamping the spilt butter into your passport with the other.
Precisely. Therefore, I would be greatly obliged if you could duplicate the mutilated entry of your passport there.
Elena Andreni ne Grunwald.
Allowing for the difference in pens, the duplication seems exact.
She could also be thinking that, like, when you are suspicious of someone, you start to watch them in between their words. You start to say, what are they doing when they're listening? What are they and she has, in that film, there's this great kind of seeding of suspicion of everyone, of holding a little bit too long, and not cutting away when you normally would. So we're saying, like, what? Why does he look out the window after he says that? Why does he take a quick little breath while the inspector is talking to him, And I think that stuff is so, some of it may be intuitive, but it's also, that's what makes that film great. If you cut that film just by the book, this person's talking, that feeling of suspicion and of unease and not quite knowing the motivations of everyone just wouldn't be there, It's all about just like that emotional literacy and that ability to read people and to see those little micro expressions and to bring them out. There's so many little looks that she gets in that film, and shifting of, like, just a little mouth that shifts, and you're like, what does that mean?
That Anthony Perkins is much more, I would say, of a conventional way to cut that scene, where you're backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. And Perkins doesn't have as much going on in that scene as Bergman does in her scene, where you really feel like she's basically very messed up. Actually, when I was watching, I was just thinking, she just looks very like she's like a nervous rabbit. She's like a rabbit. In each of the interrogation scenes, the sleight of hand that needs to be done as an editor is to not give away what the outcome is going to be, and yet give away enough that you're absolutely intrigued to know why all of them seem to be hiding secrets, but without putting it together that they're all in it together. And it's actually a much harder balance than you would think it was, because she cut it so well, you can't imagine it any other way. I remember watching Murder on the Orient Express and being utterly flabbergasted when I found out that they had all killed him. And her sleight of hand is letting you know that they all have secrets, but never ever giving away the fact that their secret is one big secret that they have together.
Mr. Foscarelli, he's very knowledgeable about automobiles. I suspected that perhaps he had once been the Armstrong's chauffeur. I asked if he had ever been in private service. No. I think Mr. Foscarelli's appalling English is more genuine than Miss Olson's, but I think he meant yes.
Think, monsieur?
Think, yes, think. What else can be done on a train isolated by a snowdrift? If all these people are not implicated in the crime, then why? Have they all told me under interrogation stupid and often unnecessary lies? Why?
Doubtless, Monsieur Poirot, because they did not expect you to be on the train. They had no time to concert their cover story.
I was hoping someone other than myself would say that.
And there's like this build, and some of it's in the writing. There's just this build of like, ooh, something, something's about to be revealed, and then it's not, and then you start questioning yourself as a viewer, and then that makes you even more uneasy. And then because not only are you like, I can't trust these people, but you're like, I can't trust myself. I can usually figure it out in these films. You look at the bad guy, and you see someone being a little shifty, and that's it, And so the way that it's cut and put together, and acted and performed is in a way where like the viewer trusts the filmmaker, but the viewer doesn't trust any of the characters, and then at a certain point the viewer stops being able to trust themselves, and that's a pretty cool place to be as a viewer, where you still have something to hold on to because you still feel the confidence in the filmmaking. You say, okay, I know this is going to go somewhere worthy, but I feel very uneasy.
Ingrid Bergman was one of many actors to have won major awards in Anne's films.
When you're an editor and one of your actors wins an award, you're like, yeah, I helped do that. And it's a testament, I think, to like how good Anne was, that the performances in her films. I mean, did like Julia Roberts win for Erin Brockovich, or she was nominated?
And yes, Julia Roberts won Best Actress in a leading role. Look at the way Anne cuts the sequence.
In Erin Brockovich, when she's in the car and she's listening about her child and she can't be there, missing out on all this stuff, she cuts away to the husband enough to let you know that he is not aware of what he's doing as being anything other than lovely and telling her the truth, and actually being a really supportive and amazing husband who is trying to make her feel involved and share these moments with her because she can't be there, and not getting on her case about it, but really being lovely about it. And then you cut to her and you just see that she's utterly shattered by what she's missing, like shattered down to her core. And yet she can't do anything else. She has to do what she's doing. And she's aware that she is missing out on so much. And you feel so much heartbreak for her. And again, if the actor hadn't been able to give the performance, or if the director hadn't been able to pull that performance out of her. There's no sleight of hand editorially there. The actor gave it to you, or they don't. The only thing that we might do is we might add a push-in. If the director didn't add a push-in because he wasn't sure if he wanted it or not, you in post can then add the push-in if it's not going to feel too over the top. But quite often you don't want the push-in on something like that. You just want to be back and just the size is right. Let the actor do their work.
Not every take is a home run, and not every moment of a take is a home run, and also just building a consistency throughout the scenes and being able to keep in your head and building upon what you've been setting up performance-wise with these actors, and having an arc that makes sense, because in a lot of the raw footage, the actors will give you a lot of options. They'll go real big, and they'll just emotionally let all out, and areas where it really doesn't call for that in the film yet, because they're just experimenting and they're finding it, and that's great. And so it's up to someone like Anne to say, okay, well, let's be honest here. We got to hold back now. Here's where we hold back, and then that way the pressure builds and builds and builds. And so when she finally explodes in that boardroom, rejecting that offer, it feels amazing, because you've been watching her be composed, and then you're just so excited to see that release. And that's some of that, I think, is Anne.
Watch their kids swim in a pool without worrying that they'll have to have a hysterectomy at the age of 20, like Rosa Diaz, a client of ours, or have their spine deteriorate like Stan Bloom, another client of ours. So before you come back here with another lame-ass offer, I want you to think real hard about what your spine is worth, Mr. Walker, or what you might expect someone to pay you for your uterus, Miss Sanchez. Then you take out your calculator and you multiply that number by 100. Anything less than that is a waste of our time. By the way, we had that water brought in special for you folks. Came from Well and Hinckley.
I think this meeting's over.
Damn right it is.
It's like you said, you have to know the rules in order to break them. It's also like you have to know the rules in order to forget them. And then they just kind of become a part of the way you move. It's like watching athletes move. They're not thinking about the mechanics of their swing. They just have done it so many times that it comes out of them. And I'm sure that Anne, for the most part, was just cutting from her gut and her experience as a human being and as a woman, and films like Erin Brockovich, there must have been so much that she brought to that. Her experiences as an editor in a male-dominated industry in the 60s, and then Erin Brockovich's story where she's this woman being looked down on and underestimated in a male-dominated industry. And I mean, I'm sure she brought a lot of herself to that.
From the interview with Walter Murch, Anne said it was one of the easiest, most pleasant films I've ever worked on. Stephen said how great it had been and everyone was high on it. As I'm sure you know, often when you don't have a scene you really need towards the end and it's written later, it stands out like a sore thumb because it's not very good and it doesn't do what you want. But this scene, which was written by Richard Le Gravenese, did exactly what we wanted in exactly the right place, and they both played it so beautifully, it made the difference to the film, I think.
Well, tell her I'm not a lawyer. That may help. Great. Why don't you just give me the address now, just in case? Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks so much. Bye. Oh, what's up?
I have your bonus check.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
Now, I want you to be prepared. The figure's not exactly what we discussed.
Why not?
Because after careful consideration, I felt that figure was not appropriate. Although you may not agree, you have to trust my experience and
Trust?
judgment.
You want me to trust you? Do me a favor, Ed. Don't use big words you don't understand.
It's a complicated issue, Erin. You're not
I did a job.
lawyer.
You should reward me accordingly. It's not complicated. You know what? That is the fucking problem. All you lawyers do is complicate situations that aren't complicated. Do you know why people think all lawyers are backstabbing, blood-sucking scumbags? Because they are. And you know, I cannot believe that you were doing this to me now when I'm up to my ass in Kettleman plaintiffs, which, by the way, looks like it's going to be double the amount that we had in Hinckley. And you expect me to go out there, leave my kids to be looked after by strangers, knock on doors, get these people to trust you with their lives, and the whole time you're screwing me. I want you to know something, Ed. It is not about the number. It is about the way my work is valued in this firm. It's about how no matter what I do, you're not...
As I was saying, I decided that the figure you proposed was inappropriate. So I increased it. Do they teach beauty queens how to apologize? Because you suck at it.
I think an editor shapes all performances, because even if the very least you're doing is making sure the best of the best is in the movie, that's a huge part of your job. It's actually something that I really pride myself on, and I'm pretty sure my mother really prided herself on.
So what have we learned about Anne? She didn't work with women. She enjoyed cutting a sex scene, was a master of the freeze frame, was as naughty as her family predicted she would be, jumped effortlessly through time and across genres, enjoyed being up in the air, brought out great performances, helped change the way films were edited, liked wearing trousers, enjoyed cutting Hollywood's leading men, displayed a heightened sense of emotional literacy, remained restlessly inventive through her whole career. She left an incredible legacy of work and remains a truly inspirational figure in the world of film.
Thank you, Academy, governors, for giving me this award. I felt very honoured and excited until I realised I had to make a speech. There was a reason I stayed behind the camera. Seriously, though, I feel so lucky to have had this wonderful life, doing a job I love, working with some of the finest directors of the last 50 years on some of the most fascinating scripts ever written. And to top it off, travel around the globe to some of the planet's most incredible and mesmerizing locations. And can you imagine a job where you are actually paid to look into the eyes of George Clooney, Peter O'Toole, Richard Burton, Peter Finch, Sean Connery, Albert Finney, Clint Eastwood, Richard Gere, Daniel Craig, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and those of 50 Shades of Grey himself, Jamie Dornan. My life has been so varied that I always say I've worked with directors ranging from David Lean to David Lynch, Sir Carol Reed to Steven Soderbergh, and Sidney Lumet to Wolfgang Peterson, and many other talented ones in between. Too many to mention, too many to upset that I didn't mention them, because you know how directors are. But I would like to thank them all for the good times, the manic and creative times, and even those times they keep me in the cutting room until the wee hours, 7 days a week. I might mumble something incoherent at the time, but looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. But of all those, I still have to say my greatest production are my 3 wonderful and talented children. Without whose love and support, I would not be up here today. My 2 sons, Anthony and James Hickox, are both writer-directors. My eldest, Anthony, has made over 30 feature films, and my youngest, James, isn't far behind him, having just spent 6 weeks in Greece shooting. Lucky him. And of course, in the middle of these 2 is my daughter, Emma, who swore she would never follow in my footsteps, but has somehow ended up a fabulous editor and is now taking my jobs. Between them, they have gifted me 4 grandchildren. The eldest, my lovely Olivia, and then the gorgeous, Emma's 2 gorgeous, Matilda and Alexander, and the newest arrival, Florence. I like to call them my own little dynasty. So thank you once more for this very special award. I have to say, I never suspected I would be holding one of these in my hand again. I like to think that I can share this with all the editors, the unsung heroes out there, most of them probably still working frantically as I speak, as this type of special award reminds us that we do not do so entirely unnoticed. Good night, and may whichever God you believe in bless you.